Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. Before the talk, I decided that we'd play a tape tonight. And then just on walking in to start the chanting, I remembered that I made a deal with Ajahn Dhamma that if he came down out of his retreat to join us, that there'd be a live talk. So that settled that. I thought maybe tonight it might be nice just to revisit a teaching that's a very useful teaching I haven't spoken on for a long time, for several years. And it's important in our practice to balance these two aspects. One is having a goal and the other is having no goal. Sometimes when we have no goal, it can be very valuable to help us put things down, to simply relax and to unwind, as it were. But it's very easy to start drifting and to start just be like a boat in the ocean. You kind of don't know where you're going, you don't know what you're doing. It can be a bit kind of drifty. And sometimes we want to have a goal. You kind of have a very clear sense as to the direction you're going, what the purpose of your life is, the purpose of your spiritual journey is. But I think it is quite true often enough that, as Ajahn Munindo famously once said, Westerners have an inherently neurotic relationship to goals. And I think that's certainly, in my experience, those are words of wisdom speaking. Nevertheless, I think in terms of having a goal, I think a valuable goal that I think we should all, as Buddhist practitioners, set for ourselves is just this one place of safety that we can kind of strive for, and that's stream entry. And again, it's not spoken of so much in our tradition simply because we can handle it so, there's so many unskillful ways of handling this notion of stream entry. And it's also, I think, quite a serious danger to overestimate oneself and to think one has attained stream entry when one has not. And it should be said, stream entry is a very lofty attainment. It's not something that's easy to attain. It's not something that you don't often come across a stream enterer, even in the monastic life. So stream entry is described in various ways in the scriptures, and my favorite way that it's talked about is the 7 reviewing factors of a stream enterer. And while, yes, it's true, this is a great way to define a stream enterer and to describe what a stream enterer is, even if you have no interest in using goals, if you're not kind of at a place in your practice where you want to set up a goal for yourself, it's a great way to illustrate some important principles in practice, to just get a sense for what the teachings are. This one list of 7 is brilliant in this regard. So the 7 reviewing factors of stream entry. I'll just see if I can run through them quickly, and then I'll go into more detail for each one. It's actually been some time since I've read them. I'm not sure if I can remember the exact wording for them, but the first one is essentially, it says, "Is my mind free of the hindrances, such that I can realize the truths?" That is the 4 Noble Truths. So that's the first one. The second one is, when I cultivate this view, do I attain calm? Do I personally attain stillness? That's the second one. The third one is, does anyone outside of the Buddha's dispensation share the same view that I have, or not? The fourth and fifth are worded in the same ways. Do I have the character of one who has stream entry? And the 6th and 7th is, do I have the strength of one who has stream entry? And those are described a little in more depth later on. So just starting with the first one, is my mind free of the hindrances? This is referring to the five hindrances, the important five hindrances that those who come here regularly will know. In the five hindrances, this is just a very rich field for practice, to kind of look at your mind and work on being free of the five hindrances. Reviewing them briefly here, the first hindrance is sensual desire, craving for sensuality. Second one is ill will, irritation, anger. The third one is sloth and torpor, sleepiness, laziness. The fourth one is restlessness, worry, flurry, agitation of the mind. And the fifth one is doubt. What is the teachings? Who is the Buddha? What should I be doing in my life? Should I ordain? Should I not ordain? Should I meditate? How should I meditate? This is doubt. Now, just looking at those five hindrances, I mean, that's an awesome teaching. Just this collection of, say, mental culture. What does it mean to train the mind, to put the mind in a beautiful state? You can see how whenever any of these hindrances are in the mind is in a state of lack. It doesn't know contentment. The mind that is, say, sensual desire, straight away that means that you're lacking something, this sense of incompleteness. Ill will, I mean, it goes without saying, that's an unpleasant state of mind, ill will. It doesn't matter if you're right or you're wrong. It doesn't matter if you're totally justified in feeling angry. Justified there is in inverted commas. As long as there's ill will, there's a sense of sickness, spiritual sickness. The mind is not at ease. So ill will in itself should be abandoned. Sloth and torpor. Essentially what's behind sloth and torpor? Whenever sloth and torpor arises, you've forgotten what is valuable about human existence. So you've forgotten that life is short. You've forgotten that it was only yesterday that we're born and we'll all be gone in a very short period of time. And what that means is that life is valuable. We only have if there's anything valuable in this universe, we have a short time to realize it. We have a short time to practice. And given that from the Buddhist perspective, and in fact from so many different perspectives, life is valuable. There is something valuable in life to pursue, to realize, to cultivate, to achieve. So therefore what that means is that life is precious. And when life is precious, sleep is not what you want to be doing with it. So that's sloth and torpor. Restlessness, just the mind which is basically discontent. Basic sense of you want to get away from the present moment. You know, whatever it is, you don't care. Throw yourself into sensuality, throw yourself into conversation, food, television, internet, whatever, refrigerator, anything to simply get away from now and here. That's restlessness. And then doubt, which is perhaps the most agonizing of all, just the sense of being lost. You know, you don't know what's what. You don't know what's true, what's not true, what's valuable, what's not valuable, how to proceed. I've often felt that as long as you can have a clear direction as to how to proceed, you know, if I have that, I have everything. If I'm confident in my next step, then there's just a sense of solidity and steadiness. So these five hindrances, the way that this is phrased, it's something like, in regards to these seven factors reviewing factors of a stream enterer, something like, let's say on realizing stream entry, you should reflect, is my mind free of the hindrances such that I should not see and perceive things as they actually are not? For when one's mind is obsessed with greed, or one's mind is obsessed with ill will, or one's mind is obsessed with sloth and torpor, or one's mind is obsessed with restlessness, or one's mind is obsessed with doubt, one is likely to perceive as real that which is not real. In other words, these hindrances arise in the mind, and you just give voice to them rather than observe them. Something arises in the mind, and rather than saying, oh, this is just a hindrance, you know, doubt arises, just some kind of doubt. It's just a hindrance of the mind. It's a habit you've been cultivating for years. You doubt something. For no reason, the mind just throws up a doubt. If you're mindful, you'll recognize this is just a doubt. This isn't to be believed. Whereas if you're not mindful, you give it far more seriousness than it deserves. So as long as these 5 hindrances are present, one is not in a position to realize the Four Noble Truths. And this is another definition, classic definition of stream entry, is one realizes the Four Noble Truths. So what is suffering? To make it easy, what is suffering and what is the end of suffering? What does it mean to be free from suffering? And if the mind is obsessed with these 5 hindrances, one is not in a position to understand the nature of these Four Noble Truths. So meditation practice, that's what we do in our meditation practice. That's why we meditate. On one level, at least, we are training the mind to be free of these 5 hindrances. We're training it to be still, to be calm, to be self-sufficient, to be independent, to not have to rely on something outside of itself for a sense of well-being, to develop a sense of stillness and solidity. One thing, sometimes it's a useful experiment, is to use your imagination. And if you have a hindrance that kind of obsesses you, and it seems hopeless, you're working with it, and you just can't seem to be at ease or be at peace with the mind. First, to identify the hindrance. Let's say it's restlessness or doubt or something like that. Identify the hindrance. And just imagine, say to yourself, what would it be like? What would it feel like if my mind were free from doubt? What would that feel like? Just imagine for a moment you were free from all doubt. There was no doubt present in the mind. And what would it feel like? And for me, what comes up is a sense of one-pointedness, a sense of an unwavering quality. Or say with restlessness, again, what comes up there for me, just a sense of, you'd be completely content. There'd be a sense of contentment. And trying to imagine this, maybe you can't experience it or you don't feel you've experienced it, but it might be something you can imagine. And it's only one step away from imagining what it might be like to actually experiencing it. So sometimes when the mind is obsessed with these hindrances, you can do this as a way to combat it. At least that's a skillful means you can try. So this is the first reviewing factor of a stream enterer. The second one was, when I personally pursue and cultivate this view, do I obtain serenity of mind? So that's a special quality here, actually. The result of pursuing or cultivating the view, whatever view you've realized, you should ask yourself, what's the result if I cultivate it? And does it lead to a state of stillness? Your samadhi, your sense of your ability to calm the mind, if your view that you've realized leads to that, then it's much more likely to be right view. So many views that you might think of, essentially if you're putting your trust in something that is impermanent, or if you say a view that life is short, therefore experience should be celebrated for its own sake. That's a common one you see these days. Just go out and pursue experience as much as you can. You only live once, live it to the full. Just taken on as face value like that will lead to turmoil. I can pretty much guarantee it. It might lead to a very rich life on a sensual level, no question, but it doesn't lead to mental stillness. Experience actually can only teach us so much, and that actually runs counter to the common wisdom of our age. Experience leads us only to understand the nature of the conditioned world. And eventually we have to say goodbye to the conditioned world. We die. Eventually we die. And if the meaning of our life was embedded in an experience out there, then that would be extremely tragic, because that's not available to everybody. We can't all have the same experiences. We can't all have an infinite number of experiences. So life is short, and the view that we want to realize, it's going to lead to calm, it's going to lead to stillness, it's going to lead to peace. And if it leads to anything else, then that's not the view that we want to cultivate. So the third reviewing factor of a stream enterer, the reflection, does anybody outside of the Buddha's dispensation have the same view as myself? The point here being that, and this one's difficult to communicate actually, without sounding dogmatic or without sounding like we have it right and everybody else has it wrong. The teaching on not-self, the teaching that the Buddha teaches that leads to the realization of not-self, the realization of the Four Noble Truths, it's a realization that comes through certain conditions being cultivated. It's not something, say, just an ordinary person living an ordinary life can just sit down and start looking at the world and realize. It comes from cultivating a very specific kind of cultivation in the mind, a very specific training. It's a training that we've heard over and over again. It's Sila Samadhi Panya, so training in virtue. That you'll see common to more or less all the religions. Training in meditation, that's something you see very rarely in the spiritual traditions, at least as they're formally structured. There's not much you'll find, say, in the Bible anyways, on training the mind, or the Quran. You may have aspects of it, but certainly it's not a comprehensive training. And then the reflections on the teachings around not-self, that this body does not belong to you. At least I'll say this, that a penetration of a truth like that, one intuits, at the very least one intuits, is my understanding, one intuits the presence of a Buddha. So that even if one were to realize these truths in another teaching, there would be a sense that, there has to be a teacher who teaches this. There has to be an ultimate teacher, someone who's realized these truths and taught them in a perfect form. That must be possible. And whatever word or name he might give that person, one has to intuit that there has to be a pinnacle. Wisdom has to manifest itself, and there must be a pinnacle of that manifestation in the human form. And that, in my understanding, is part and parcel of one's realization of stream entry. Sometimes stream entry is described, one of the qualities is a stream enterer is independent of the Buddha. He's independent of the teacher. And what that means is that for a stream enterer, one has such a clear sense as to what the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha is. He actually no longer needs the Buddha around. A stream enterer has realized the teachings, and he knows what has to be done. So the Buddha is there's nothing especially, it's not that you have to believe in the Buddha or anything like that. It's not the truth that these truths belong to the Buddha. These truths that the Buddha teaches are simply timeless truths, whether the Buddha is there or not, whether he teaches them or not. The anicca, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, that existence in itself must contain unsatisfactory elements, and that nothing that you experience in life is you. Nothing belongs to you. This body is not yours. And it never was. These are teachings that are very unique to the Buddha. So that's the third reviewing factor of a stream enterer. The stream enterer realizes, I've just realized something that basically implies, part and parcel of this realization is the existence of a Buddha and the existence of a Sangha for that matter. So that's the third realization. Okay, so the fourth one is, do I have and I'm not sure if this is strength or character actually. I think it's character. Do I have the character of one of right view? And then the Buddha says, what is the character of one who has right view? And he says, though it is possible that someone of right view, say stream enterer, may commit an offense, may break the precepts. This is possible. But on realizing he has committed an offense, he immediately confesses it to one who is one's teacher, or one who is wiser than oneself. Just in the same way that a child, If he picks up a red-hot coal in his hand, he immediately lets it go. It's possible maybe that he'd pick it up, but he would immediately let it go because it's so hot. In the same way, a stream enter, it's possible that he would commit an offense, but immediately, on realizing he's committed an offense, he would confess it. So this refers, for the layperson, there's the 5 precepts. It's to not kill, not steal, not commit adultery, not to lie, not to take drugs or alcohol. For a monastic, it's the 200 plus training rules that a monastic has, or it's 10 in the case of a novice or a seminary. Actually, to be honest, I'm not sure how many a seminary has, but anyways, it's the monastic training rules that we've undertaken. And I won't go into the great length as to the many ways that this remarkable aspect fits in with the whole teaching. But the way I've always understood this and took this to mean is that a stream enter has a certain faith. It's faith, or it's wisdom. It's a certain trust, a certain understanding of kamma. That essentially good actions have good results and bad actions have bad results. So one of the characteristics of stream enter is that he has good virtue. And that's because he has an insight into an insight into kamma, that if he does something that is unwholesome, and if it's not confessed, if it's not digested, if you will, if it's not brought up and understood and resolved, what's happening is you're opening a door to kind of go down a path which could lead to great suffering. This is the connection. The stream enterer, we often say, or it says in the scriptures, the stream enterer is free from rebirth in a bad destination. He's free from that. And why is he free from that? And one of the reasons he's free from that is that it's impossible that he can break a precept and conceal it. And it's impossible that he can, cultivate unwholesome states and, really kind of delight in that. There's a sense of shame and fear of wrongdoing that is simply innate to a stream enterer that makes it impossible for him to do such things. So that's just a fascinating aspect, and it's something that we can, it applies to all of us. Of course, we want to cultivate wholesome states, and if we do something that's unskillful, it's worth bringing that up, kind of sharing it with somebody you respect, someone you love, someone you trust, with the intention of, okay, how can I resolve this? How can I relinquish this kind of activity for my own benefit? It's not for anybody else's benefit necessarily, it's for your own benefit. Although, of course, other people will benefit in the meantime. The 5th quality, if I'm counting these correctly, it starts off with the same wording. One reflects, do I have the character of one who has attained stream entry? And what is the character of one who has attained stream entry? Even though one might be involved in various activities in the monastery, one still has a keen regard for training in virtue, for training the mind, and for training in wisdom. One still has a keen regard for this. And that's telling, because sometimes a stream enterer, it's not that simply once one is a stream enterer, one just simply lays back and it's like, right, now I'm safe, I just don't have to practice anymore. At the very most, I have 7 lives to go, so let's just kind of live it up. That's not how it works. On the attainment of stream entry, essentially one sees the value of practicing all the more. One sees how wonderful the goal is, the result is all the more. One has all the more confidence that one's actions actually lead to that goal, and therefore one feels all the more enthusiasm for it. So this is kind of relevant. I have met quote-unquote stream enterers who simply feel that it's okay to just kind of rest on their laurels and just kind of, they're kind of safe, and that's not, I think, how it works. And then the 6th factor, the Buddha says, one reflects, do I have the strength of one who has attained stream entry? And what is the strength of one who has attained stream entry? When one hears the Dhamma being taught, one listens with eager ears. One listens with one's whole attention as a matter of vital concern. I think that's the way it's phrased. And I think what's at play here for me anyways is that there's something in the true Dhamma, in the true teachings of the Buddha, that when one listens sincerely, what is happening is a seed is being planted in one's heart. It's just a matter of basic causality. When one listens with intent, a certain transmission takes place. A certain transmission, nothing mystical here, but just simply if the true Dhamma is being taught and one listens with eager ears, whether you're a stream enterer or not, the result of that is later on there's a movement towards the Dhamma. The Dhamma is cultivated. This is just a natural principle. Basically, I think it's a natural principle of anything. I mean, if you listen to something with intent, if that's where your mind inclines, your future will kind of unfold along those lines. I think it's, I remember reading in some Hindu text somewhere that whatever it is that one heart sincerely desires, one will achieve eventually. And that makes sense to me. Like whatever you really love, whatever you really have your heart set on, eventually you'll get it. But of course, eventually you'll lose it as well. And you'll suffer in proportion to which you are attached to it. But nonetheless, if one's heart is sincerely bent on something, it's just a matter of time, and it may be lifetimes, but it is just a matter of time. In the same way, if one's heart is really sincerely bent on the Dhamma, if one listens to the teachings, not because the teacher is charismatic, per se, because sometimes teachings can come from a charismatic teacher, sometimes they might not. Not because the teachings are entertaining, but because what is being said is meaningful. And one loves what is meaningful. One's heart is so intent on finding that which is meaningful and that which is true, that just hearing these words, one listens, one says, right, there's something here that is valuable. So whether you're a stream enterer or not, I think this principle holds. We really want to develop that sense of respect whenever you hear the Dhamma being taught, even if it's from a monk that you don't respect or a nun that you don't respect. If the Dhamma is being taught, and if you're listening with intent, with an intent ear, I think wisdom will unfold on some level. So that's another reviewing factor of the stream enterer. And the last one, I think, is very much related to this one. Again, it's phrased the same way. One reflects, do I have the strength of a stream enterer? And what is the strength of a stream enterer? Whenever the Dhamma is being taught, one feels delight in the Dhamma. One feels inspiration in the Dhamma. One feels joy in the Dhamma. And again, this is an intrinsic quality of what it is that leads us on in life. If watching movies is something that thrills you, you are likely to be living a life where you're cultivating watching movies. That's just what's going to happen. And I might say something like this. It's almost like it's a natural law that if you love watching movies, sooner or later, you'll watch Casablanca. It's simply going to happen. If you love watching movies and you're just a movie buff and you go through all these great movies, eventually you'll come across Casablanca. So too, if you love the Dhamma, if you love listening to it, sooner or later you're going to realize the Dhamma. And you're going to seek out opportunities to listen to the Dhamma. And this is an important part of the practice, is to listen to the teachings, to expose yourself to the teachings, to generate a love for the teachings. And especially for those who are, say, bent on stream entry. I mean, it may sound, certainly for just, say, a Buddhist who is interested in meditating, but, you don't really see Buddhism as like the meaning of your life, and you don't really have any interest in being an enlightened being. There's still a lot that you can learn from Buddhism. But once you set your heart on liberation, we have to start discerning what are the things that are going to help us on this path, and what are the things that are going to be obstacles? Exposing ourselves to certain kind of contact, certain kinds of conversation, certain kinds of sounds, if they're an obstacle, they're an obstacle. And we have to let that go. For a stream enterer, this is easier, I think, simply because all of these 7 factors that I'm describing here, there's something that he's kind of achieved, he's realized, he's attained. For the rest of us, this takes a bit more work. But these 7 factors, they kind of help give us a sense, just what direction are we going in anyway? When we do certain things, we have all these rituals in the monastery, and for newcomers it can be really weird and really off-putting. But the whole reason we do it is to help develop skillful conventions that will reinforce each of these 7 qualities, these 7 factors. When you sort of start thinking about these 7 factors, it only makes sense that this becomes, I've used this image many times, it becomes like a black hole. They just really feed on each other, and they're kind of mutually, it's like a circle kind of feeding in on itself. And it can't help but lead in peace, in cessation, in calm, in joy. It has to, I can't see how it could be otherwise. So that's something to really reflect on and do our best to do our best, whether stream entry seems possible or not, or whether we think we've attained it or not. It's not the point. We kind of move in that direction, incline the mind, and give ourselves to the training, and it's got to lead us to the right results. So that's some thoughts for tonight.